Stewardshift is an idea that I had, and I wrote a book about it. Really what needed to happen in the church is for us to look a little more at the idea of stewardship, which is an old idea, but be honest about the possibility that we needed to shift, we needed to move a little bit off of the time-honored way of looking at this doctrine and this practice into something that was a little more practical and maybe even a little more honest. People who look at stewardship usually look at it in the fall when their congregations are in need of money. What they sometimes forget is that it's actually a much older idea that even goes beyond what many congregations think stewardship should be. For example, it's not about money. Well, yeah, it is, but it's not only about money. And so they say, well, it's about everything in life. Yeah, it is, but what about everything in life? And when we say that, we start to get at some of the original meanings of this fantastic term that I think could offer excitement and energy and vitality to congregations who've kind of gone stale on stewardship as fundraising or as management of what God gives us. It's much bigger and I think much more important. And so I called it Stewardshift, talking about the shifts that we need to do. And then the subtitle I called An Economia, big Greek word, for congregational change. We can change because our habits can be reversed. We can change because the Spirit moves us. We can change because we have to, even if we're close to death, maybe even because we're close to death. If we're going to talk about stewardship, we have to talk about stewards. And so I talk about my own life as a steward and my misgivings and my uncomfortableness about the way we have been doing stewardship all these years. Then I introduced a little bit about the doctrine and the history of stewardship as it really existed, both in the scriptures and in the Greek world from which it came. And then I take people into some places in scripture where we really need to look a lot more carefully at what the Bible actually says about time-honored sacred icons of stewardship theology. I look at some new places where stewardship could be found in the scriptures we may not have looked at very carefully, but could give us life. And then the majority of the book goes back to where stewardship really went back to, is to the secular world. In about the middle 1800s, as a bunch of devout lay folk looked at the way that we were funding God's mission and said, this is peanuts. We could do better than this. And so because they were very excited about overseas mission, they were excited about what could happen in the great awakenings, all of them, they looked in the Bible and they said, where does the Bible talk about how we fund churches? They found what looked like good stuff from which to construct a stewardship theology, and they persuaded other lay folks that this was in fact a new way of approaching how we do church. They got those folks excited. And so things like the tithe began. Things like funding overseas missions, regular offerings, passing collection plates. But then there started to be this fall off. And when that fall off started, what churches did is, well, they tried harder. And when that didn't work, they tried a little harder. And so the thing got even more tightly wound around these scriptures and these presumptions, and they still didn't work. And so we live today with a problem of about a 200-year history of a theology that may be suspect and a sociology, fundraising, that may be also suspect, but we keep doing it and we keep hoping for the better. My hope for this Stewardshift book is that there will be a shift happen, and the shift goes two ways. One, let's look at the scripture a little more honestly, but perhaps even more importantly, we can go back to the secular world, a place where God's wisdom also exists, where God is also working every day among godly people who are trying to change the world because they believe all this stuff we believe. And go to those people and say, what do you know about stewardship from your expertise, from your area of interest, from your education? And so we can take back this secular wisdom of God and put it into the church and make that part of what we do as our mission. I think that would be exciting. I think that would be very exciting.